Hey guys, welcome to another book review of an indie author. This time we are going to look a little bit at Julian Greystoke's The Wolf and the Hawk. It's a very cold and rainy day outside, so it was perfect for filming this review. It was a very nice book to read. It wasn't necessarily like a cozy read that you would snuggle up with. It was definitely action fantasy. When I get into things a bit more, I think you guys might understand why I'm excited about this book. So I decided to read this book because I've been following Julian's channel for maybe a little bit over a year. She has done a lot of other reviews as well, so I always enjoy watching hers because she does like really deep dives and is very, very opinionated on the good things. So pointing out things that have also helped with my writing. Her book, The Wolf and the Hawk, came out at the end of last year, I believe, and her next book, which is not quite a sequel, it's more of a companion set in the same universe, is supposed to come out, I think we're hoping for the end of this year, but pretty soon. I know I had the opportunity to help with the process a little bit, sort of kind of like as a beta reader. So I already know and I'm excited, but I won't tell you anything about that because we have to review this book first. So, The Wolf and the Hawk, which I read actually after reading the next book. So I kind of already went in knowing some of the character relations that would develop. Really, I only went in knowing the two main characters' relationship that would develop. But because it's labeled as a fantasy romance, I think you kind of know they're going to end up together. So it's not a big a spoiler if I tell you that, right? So as usual, let's read the description and we will jump right in. Rione is the wolf of the Verne, the war leader of her nomadic clan. When she is promised in marriage to Alexander, the Hawk of Ged, she imagines she will become his war queen. She hopes to lead his soldiers and defend the farming kingdom from a supernatural threat called the Thra. When Rione arrives, she finds her new husband handsome, mysterious, and utterly indifferent to her. He's uninterested in including her in his life, especially in the war room. Frustrated and thwarted, Rione struggles to fit into this strange kingdom and win over the man she hopes to help, all without letting her temper get the better of her. When a fearsome attack cripples Ged's army, Rione will have to rise to the challenge, but will it be too late for her husband? Alright, having to read that about getting pummeled by puppies is always fun. Don't have enough room for the both of you. Then we can have both puppies in the show. Trey wants you to say hi, and Tundra wants you to say hi. Good girl. Okay, can I talk about the book? Yeah? Yeah? It's still raining. So let's start with a cover, because I always like to start with the cover because I'm a visual person. Covers definitely influence the way you look in or read something. Yes. Initially, I wouldn't say I wasn't impressed, but I was kind of neutral on the cover. We have the wolf and a hawk figure carved as the chess pieces on the board. So I feel like the motif of a chess game or having chess pieces is used a lot, especially in fantasy or I guess war strategy related things. Yes, I am petting you. Based on the description and everything, it looks fine. Like the art of it is gorgeous. It's actually, you can see how they digitally painted the figures and it's beautiful. But it really doesn't take effect until you actually read the story. Also, I have mixed feelings on the font choice for the title itself. The author's name I have no trouble with, and as far as the fantasy romance, nothing. Maybe it's a little too big. But the Wolf and the Hawk font style feels very loose in sort of a, what do you want to call it? Contemporary way. Now, because it's a romance, I was kind of like thinking in that direction. But you see a lot more fantasy genres with, oh, hi. Yes. You can just sit there for a moment with very bold, stronger fonts. I don't know, I think it just feels a bit too playful for the content, but at the same time, because it's not so heavy and serious, it doesn't... I'm sorry. Oh, this is the only time I have to review or record today, and I got puppies. Do you want to say something about the cover? You liked it? Well, that's good. It's got a woofie on it, and you're like a woofie. Yeah. He likes it. Atreyu likes the cover. I do like the cover. I might myself have chosen a different font. Alright, down you go. Down you go. Just give me 5 minutes. Can I have 5 minutes? Oh, now your sister's up. Okay. Moving on, apparently he just wants that to be the end of the cover section. Onto the plot, which I think you have a decent understanding of through the description. So I'm kind of going to combine plot with characters because the characters themselves are really driving them. Oh, hello. Rione is a very strong, independent warrior woman, specifically a warrior woman who kicks butt. Like, picture, you know, Viking warriors or Amazon kind of thing. Like, she's big, she's strong, and she is not going to take crap from anybody. So she goes into this arranged marriage thinking that, well, this is my skill, this is what I can offer, I'm going to be the war queen for Ged, and through their treaty they'll, since her clan is nomadic, be able to move her people through their lands more easily. However, Alexander, affectionately known as Xander, is struggling to accept her. We don't necessarily see it as a struggle at first, but he's almost flat out rejecting her. There's no really intimacy between them. Like, there is a literal, like, consummation of marriage, but that's kind of where it ends. He keeps her out of the war room, he keeps her out of his general life, avoiding her. You do get bits and pieces where Rione thinks she's making progress, and then he closes in on himself because he's really trying to be the king that his father wants him to be. So that's a big drive for his character. The biggest surprise going into this was Rione had to adapt herself to think more strategically in order to get through to Xander, instead of just relying on her fighting impulses and strengths and whatnot. It is those, I guess, battle strategy strengths that also help her really connect with him. But as far as approaching him and trying to get through his shell, she does have to change those tactics without becoming like a wishy-washy woman who totally changes her personality for him. Like, her personality never changes. It's just her approach and her way of speech. You know, she does a couple things to try and not necessarily impress him, but, like, you know, she dresses up trying to impress the Xander's father, tries some traditions because she thinks that will help their relationship, and when it really doesn't, she stays true to herself, and that becomes the character that Xander actually falls in love with at the end. There is a big twist after the attack which cripples the army, which I loved. Spoiler alert, mini spoiler alert, because I'll kind of allude to it. There are character deaths, and there are severe consequences to not being prepared in battle, and I'm a big fan of those because I think a more realistic fight is when you do have consequences that result in loss of a body part, loss of a ability to cope, sort of trauma. Having this definitely strengthened the characters for me. It also kind of put that realism in it that I really enjoy, where a lot of other books that I've read, yes, you have the action, you have all this fantasy elements going on, but nobody really gets hurt. Nobody walks out of there any different than they walked in. They're hurt in the meantime, they're maybe slowed down a bit, but they're going to come back with something stronger, and having actually characters walk away totally different and literally crippled through an action or a failure of theirs is very it's very satisfying. It's very satisfying. So building on all of that world building, The Wolf and the Hawk is not a terribly long novel, and I don't remember if she mentions it in the before or after pages, but this is part of a larger universe with many, many stories, many companion novels, if not directly sequels. So she's taking the time to introduce you to the world, and specifically introduce you to this part of the world that we're working in very, very deeply. So we know the world is out there. We have our connections between different people, different places, but we're not overwhelmed and drowning in information that, it's like what's necessary to the cause. This specifically is something that I enjoy. Julian and I also happen to be the fan of the same author, Tamora Pierce, who has a full, gigantic companion series thing in the world of Tortal that spans generations. I love it, and it is definitely one of my inspirations, and I can definitely see how she's using similar storytelling within her books. The one part that I did get kind of tired of was since Rione was the one coming from a barbarian society into civilized society, she pointed out all the differences quite frequently. And when you're first arriving at the kingdom, it makes sense. Like, they do this, we do this, they do this, we do this. And throughout, she still has the opportunities to point them out because of the celebration or just the way that they handle death and general differences. And while it was interesting to see the differences, especially because the Vern have a very different outlook than we are used to in Western culture, I really appreciated it, but I think it might have been the way it was presented or the wording, where it just felt like a this versus this kind of thing instead of naturally doing it, and without us seeing like, oh, this is different from what they would do. I think if she had gone in with Rione and started the burial rites without explaining that we do it differently than burying them, because I think a lot of the people who read this are familiar with Western culture, and even if we don't, or if we aren't told that the Ged do this exactly, we may be able to assume that just because they are very westernized in their style of culture, if that makes sense. So it was all good information. It was all very interesting, but I think just the juxtaposition each time it was presented became sort of tiresome. As far as the writing goes, I think I found a few typos here and there. Nothing major, nothing that was like story breaking. With this being a fantasy romance, as far as the romance side was, we did have Fade to Black, which I appreciate. Think what you will there. But with the action scenes, I was very worried early on that they were all going to be chunkers, because the first chapter is a very detailed sparring session with Rione. I enjoy action. I enjoy all the visual things that happen to it. But once it gets to the point of being so wordy that you're literally describing like every move, or it's like going on forever, I start tuning it out and I just kind of skim. And this happens with a lot of different stories, which I myself try to break them up with dialogue so at least you can find the important information there. I don't think mine are too long, but then again, I'm the writer, so I could be having the same problem. I don't know. But I did notice that one was pretty long. I believe one of the other, I want to say the one in the middle of the book was long-ish, but the final battle was fantastic. I really loved the climax. That was very well written, because there's a lot of different things going on, and it wasn't just this huge battle, but there was movement away from actual fighting within the battle to a different situation. So I think that breakup, it made it interesting. It made that action interesting. obviously, overall, I really enjoyed this book. This is the type of book that I would normally pick up off a shelf. Granted, I don't know if the having a fantasy romance as like the subtitle or whatever would have dissuaded me. Because yes, it is a fantasy romance, but I think even if it was just labeled fantasy, I wouldn't have, how do I put it? On a normal day, something saying romance definitely has a different stigma to it, especially nowadays, but we have like very, very different levels of romance. So this is what I would just consider a regular fantasy, because most fantasies you do have a romance in them, and part of that is a well done romance in a fantasy is very naturally brought up through the plot, through the character actions. I understand why it's a fantasy romance, since it's really the relationship between Rione and Xander and developing that and everything that comes with it. And you just can't say a fantasy relationship thing because that's kind of weird. So, but generally, like I said, this book reminded me a lot of the Tamora Pierce books that I love. So this is definitely like in my prime genre. I loved it. It was well done. Can't wait for the next book to officially come out. But definitely go check out The Wolf and the Hawk. It's available on Kindle as an ebook or paperback. You can also check out Julian's channel. Put a cards are on this side, I think. I'll put a card up there linking to Julian's channel. She does a lot of book reviews, some writing tips, some read-alongs, which is really how I got into watching her channel. And if you or anyone you know or any book that you've read is written by an independent author or self-published, let me know. I can check it out. If I get the chance to read and review it, I'll definitely do that. So recommend those below in the comments, or you can message me on Instagram. As for me, today is October 25th. So we're coming up on November, which is NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. Usually I don't officially participate, so I have less than a week to decide if I'm actually gonna like create the account and participate on the website forum thing. I'm not sure how they changed it. But I'm definitely going to be writing a lot next month regardless. Depending on how my workflow is, it's going to be still focusing on writing because I want to finish the draft of my second book by the time that this first book comes out in January. But currently this is with the editor, so I'll be getting that back most likely early mid-November. And I'm sure I'm going to be way too excited to wait and like format everything and set it up. So I'll give you guys more updates, but this will probably be the last book review for the year. Actually, yes, there will be one more because I'm going to review What Once Was Mine. Everything is right here. Isn't that convenient? I'm going to review What Once Was Mine, the Rapunzel Twisted Tale, and it is so good. So good. So that's coming up. Stuff about my books is coming up. And we'll pretty much be preparing videos for next year as well. So thank you guys for watching. Again, recommend a book below. Send me a message, however, or if you've read Julian's book, The Wolf and the Hawk, comment. Let me know what you thought about it. We can talk about it. And I need to get to work on stuff. So thank you guys. I keep saying thank you. It's never ending. Of course, now the puppies are asleep. Go figure. So I'll talk to you guys later.